Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another exciting edition of Solar Now and the Future with its economic impact on Black America. And I'm your host, Ronald Bethay, and you know if you join us on a regular basis that the slogan for this show, if there's power in numbers, then the positive change financial benefit. The Positive Change Purchasing Cooperative LLC serves as an economic blueprint for renewable energy companies, both large and African American owned renewable energy companies, to address the high energy costs at our historically Black colleges and universities, to utilize Black owned farmlands and HBCU campuses to develop capacity and initiatives for renewable energy projects to bring down the women locally, nationally, and throughout the diaspora. Also, this show is brought to you every week, ladies and gentlemen, by the Positive Change Purchasing Cooperative LLCs, who serves as an economic blueprint for, as we said, renewable energy companies, both large and smaller, along with increasing market share for African and African American owned renewable energy companies. Now, this show is also brought to you every week, ladies and gentlemen, by the Black Sports Legends Foundation, BSLF HBCU Solar Radio Talk Show Initiative, and you're listening to on that initiative of the World Wide Web uh, over the Positive Change broadcast radio TV online network. And as you know, many of you, ladies and gentlemen, that join us on a regular basis, this show is also brought to you every week by the National Association of Blacks in Solar. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to jump right on into our show today because I have a gentleman, Mr. Daion Trasada. I think that I'm pronouncing the name correctly.
Trasada
but
yeah.
I've met this gentleman over Trasada on my show today. But I met this gentleman about a year or so ago, and we've been talking and communicating over the phone, talking about various renewable energy subjects and CMB market area. And I wanted to get him on the show because he wears a number of hats. Today, he's visiting us as the board chair of the Uplift Foundation here in the Washington metropolitan area, but he also wears another hat as with the Maryland Clean Energy Center, which serves as our green bank for the state. He serves in the capacity as their grant director and community engagement director. So, with that being said, I knew it wouldn't take long before I'd run into another technical problem. But you're still with me today here. I still got you with me, brother.
Good.
And this is what we're going to do. We're going to just go ahead and move forward. We get a little feedback. In the show, but I wanted to keep moving the conversation forward, because I was really just moving the screen over a little bit because I wanted to sort of share this with our listening audience. Now, the the green banks of Washington, D.C. has a has addressed a number of ourselves faced with through federal and state legislatures. I like to try to make things pretty portfolio a specific future date that the jurisdiction or area or state must meet these quality air standards. They were passed to what we know combat climate change. And what comes through that legislation has a rippling effect through communities because you have commercial, you have residential, you have nonprofit, you have all types of owners of physical buildings. And as everybody's most people are aware that transportation contributes a great deal as it relates to greenhouse gas emissions. And we look at our industries such as the airline industry, we look at our trucking industries, we look at all of the various industries that it takes for us as a country to maintain its economy through transportation, but it has a price, and that price is called greenhouse gas emissions, which are released into our atmosphere and in our body, which is causing something called global warming. And if we don't get a grip, our children and children's children won't have a future. So recently, the organization put out a piece called in Solar World talking about green banks traditionally supported renewable energy projects with federal funding having considerable role in their financing of solar projects, but the Trump administration's cuts to the greenhouse gas initiative last year with 20 billion allocated for banks for U.S. renewable energy deployment has gone. A coalition of banks working together have come together called the U.S. Green Bank 50. Now, we're not going to be long-winded on this, but what I want people to understand that this is proposed legislation for the fiscal 2027 budget. This legislation has not passed yet. This legislation is what they are fighting over right now on Capitol Hill as we speak. But we need to be educating our citizens and our public about what is at stake as relates to these issues. So, with that being said, brother, I wanted to set the table and t- welcome to the airways of Solar Now and the Future with its economic impact on Black America.
You're right. Yeah, that's a great way to set the table and kind of, start off. First of all, happy to be here with you today. I know we have been planning this for a long time. We've been having those discussions, and something definitely need to share with your audience. Kind of what's going on at the federal level, and also what's going on at the state level right here in Maryland, particularly. So, the budget in Maryland has just been signed recently by Governor Moore. And to his credit, kind of in the opposite of where, we stand in Washington, D.C., the governor's budget does make some very significant commitments, I think, to, fighting climate change and trying to lower people's bills and putting real resources behind the push for renewable energy. I don't know if your reader or your listeners are familiar with the Maryland Strategic Energy Investment Fund, a lot of times referred to as the SEIF. And it is a very large pool of money that the state has. Generally, I mean, it fluctuates, but right now it's probably around 800 million to around $1 billion, somewhere in that range, that is available to and is earmarked to be used for energy efficiency and different types of programs to fight climate change. Now, over the years, some of that money has been pulled out of the fund to fund the state's general revenue, because, the state always has a lot of budget issues that they need to cover. But this year, many advocates, really wanted the governor to emphasize using those funds for what they were intended for, to fight, climate change and do other things like that. So this year, about $400 million was pulled out of the SEIF, for general revenue purposes. But there were a lot of investments with the remaining funds that were put in that will help people in terms of energy bills and energy efficiency, including $300 million for the Office of Home Energy Programs, and that's to help low income people get different assistance with heating bills, electricity bills, and avoid shutoffs, among other things. There's also $73 million in there to promote heat pumps, which are clean energy sources for heating and cooling homes and residential areas. There's also funding for the Maryland Clean Energy Center for the Climate Catalytic Fund, which help fund programs and energy development projects. And 40% of those projects have to go to low income and disadvantaged communities. So that's, at least on the state level, there is some investment. Now, of course, that's not to say that we don't need that same support and investment at the federal level that we had in the past. So, it's important, for everybody to know that I have to, tell, our congressmen and senators and, fight for what's right in the federal budget, because this administration is, well, first of all, they want to do away with even um, uh, stating that greenhouse gases are a source of pollution and harm. So they walked away from the endangerment finding. So just on a basic level, they don't even believe climate change is an issue. So, with that said, that's kind of where we are. You're standing at the state level.
Well, Damian, I'm sure glad that you kept talking, because I was
Mhm.
trying to stop the echo, the double echo in the conversation, and I cut myself off for a minute. But I'm back with you, and you can hear me, correct?
I can hear you great. Yeah, you sound a lot
You
better
can
now.
hear me,
And
correct? And what? Yeah, yeah. What I want my audience to understand is that we have been struggling here in the DMV area with our utility bills. And in our region, which is composed of the mid-Atlantic states, we have 13 states along with the District of Columbia. We are under the regulatory entity known as the PJM. Our governors of those 13 states, whether they have been red or blue states, I will give them their kudos on that. This is the only thing I've seen them come together around about the issue that these pass throughs from these data centers have to be charged back to those industries that are creating the demand and not passed on to the citizens. So we're talking about the tech industry and we're talking about the fossil fuel industry. The data and the numbers don't lie. We have 67 million customers that are being impacted about this. So it does not matter about your race, creed, or color, okay, on
Mhm.
this one. We're talking about a situation where we have in the Mid-Atlantic, the numbers that were given were 1,501 data centers that are in active status. The PJM has more data centers than any other region of the United States of America. And Virginia leads the way with 668 data centers, with more scheduled to come online. What is so scary about this thing is when people realize the importance of the role of the data centers, because 70% of all cellular phone calls that are done around planet Earth are routed through northern data. It was almost started. But being that I have lived in the metropolitan area for over 50 years, and I have been in the limousine transportation industry, it wasn't new to me, because I realized that because of the Pentagon, CIA, and other federal agencies with a plethora of our defensive contractors, so all located right here in Crystal City, DMV market demographic. So we had a need for this this warehousing of this data, because they didn't have the rooms in these buildings. So somebody came up with the idea, let's put this all in data centers. So it became a growth industry for Loudoun County. Loudoun County leads the nation with data center development. They've got over 300 data centers, which almost sounds impossible when you realize that one data center on a daily basis, depending on the daily load, can use as much energy to power from 15 to 50,000 homes. And that's not a major center. That's what we would call a smaller unit. When we look at the fact in DC, we've got 16 data centers within the physical confines of the District of Columbia, and we don't have a lot of land. So it shows you how we are impacted every day by the thirst for more energy to power these centers. And that energy is being driven by natural gas turbine technology, which was the payback for the fossil fuel industry, because they could have come up with another solution rather than using natural gas turbine technology. But that was the chosen, quote unquote, primary, what they would call stable fuel that they would use for that. But that meant that you have to get it from point A to point B. So here we come with a what? Infrastructure issue of who's going to pay for the new power infrastructure grids to get that power from the power plant to the data center. And
Yes.
it is causing all kinds of havoc in our local
Mm-hmm.
and county
Yeah.
municipality markets.
Yeah. Right.
Gaithersburg is not that far from us, and
Mm-mm.
they're going through some major things. So when I'm bringing this up to bring out why the Uplift Institute that you are chairing is so important with the educational component, because who's educating the people about why are they utility bills so damn high?
Exactly. And what we try to bring to people is, like you're the one connecting these dots, between the environmental justice, the environmental issues, and the social and economic issues. Because you talked about the data centers as they exist today, for the phone technology and, your Amazon and that thing sort of thing. Yeah, and that's been there. But even with that, demand had remained pretty flat going up, through late 20 teens up into the early 2020s. These data centers we're talking about now, we're talking about the data centers that are being built to power AI. Okay. So it's a whole nother level of data center. And that's why this demand in this, why we're so, what you're talking about is these they call them hyperscalers, like Google and Meta and
Well,
Amazon.
see, this is what uh is so, Daion, so disturbing to me. I cover this stuff. And as a man of color who is reading online data center information and looking at article after article, and when I see a situation like we have in Northeast Louisiana right now,
Cancer Alley, yeah.
Already Cancer Alley, the impacting the brown and black communities, where Mega is building a data center that's large enough to fit 17 foot NFL football stadiums inside of it.
Yes.
This data center, the governor was trying to. I can sell you some real estate in the Baltimore Washington Harbor or the New York Bridge or the Brooklyn Bridge or the Memorial Bridge. He was telling them people, this is not going to affect your electricity bill now. And I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. And he was he's able to do that because people, and this was another thing we had to go, how does your electricity bill work? Like, how do you get these prices? Because most people think it's just the lights they use. I use this many hours, my lights was on this long. That's a piece of it. But the problem is you're gonna pay for these data centers whether you use them or not, because they charging you based on what they think they're going to need in the use they think they're going to have in the future. And they're going to charge you for that today because they're figuring, well, we got to build, we pay for the infrastructure that's built.
Well, what really got me focused on this thing was a dear friend of mine, Ted Trabue. Ted used to be the director of DCSEU here in DC. Now he's on the DC Public Service Commission. And he was explaining to me, he said, Ron, this is what you got to really understand. In the 13 states, it don't make no difference where the data center is built. We're all in part of the same regulatory entity.
Yes.
And they set the clearinghouse capacity. He said, now, when you set a clearinghouse capacity for 1% for solar, 3% for wind, and you got 80% still fossil fuels, then you got a skew where we got over 5,000 projects that's already been completed. We're not talking about something getting ready to be built. We're talking about developers who have already built these power plants, solar, wind power plants, but they can't get them permitted out of the queue that they're setting in. So when I read the article that just appeared by Mrs. Moffett in Evergreen Action, stating that the fiscal year 2027 budget, the Prep 47 administration is proposing a $15 billion cut where they're going to cut out the entire $4 billion for EV charging infrastructure. But for the Department of Interior, they have a permitting division where people work there that issue the permits for these projects. They're talking about firing the whole staff. If these companies cannot get permits, you can't just put this stuff up. I mean, somebody who is somebody, is there any adults in the room?
They're not. You've answered your own question.
I mean, it's unbelievable. The stuff I'm reading, I'm saying, wait a minute. How can they be telling us that they're going to fire the federal people workers who have the expertise
Well,
everybody.
yeah, I mean, we currently, Maryland, like we had got a charging and fueling infrastructure grant to put EVs into the ground, and that stopped. We can't even get we're having a hard problem. It's taken months just to get bills paid from when we started before they shut it down. I mean, literally months because the staff is not there. So we're not able to continue to put these chargers in the ground like we planned, because A, the money is tied up in court. But B, even for some of the stuff we started, like you said, we've seen already some, employee cuts that it's even hard for them to process paperwork, much less, do permitting.
uh, well, see, this is why I wanted you on, Damian, to connect the dots, because
Mhm.
you see these grants all the time. That's what you do. But I bought I from the education of the Uplift Institute standpoint, in terms of educating people. I was trying to explain to folk. I'm a Prince George's County resident.
Mhm.
Okay, I got two people in my house, but I suffer from a disease called they grown, but they ain't never gone. So you got a
Right.
grown person who works every day. They keep a room. They come home when they want, because everybody's grown.
That's right.
But the point
And
is,
they like
the
using
point
stuff. I'm
is,
sure they like using stuff.
I have never, yeah, we had never needed any help until my wife got sick, and we needed some help. I'm looked up. I got $1,000 electricity bill, and I'm saying, oh my God. I'm saying, how do we pay? So we go and try to apply to get some help, just to sort of get us out of the rear, so we can try to play catch up. So we won't be
Mhm.
always behind the 8 ball.
Yes, sir.
We
Yes,
go
sir.
there, we go there. They looked at it, looked at everything, and it wasn't a problem. Then it was a problem. And then when I found out that the cutoff was 2,600 something bucks, I said, well, you can't live in a tree house for that.
Not in this area.
And and the lady told me, she said, "You're right, Mr. Bethay." She said, "I've been going to Annapolis. I've been arguing with folks. So I called my
Mhm.
state delegate. I called my representative. I called my local council people. I said, what the
Mhm.
hell are y'all doing that y'all
Yeah.
don't understand
Yeah.
that we have people who work for the federal government? They go right across the line in the District of Columbia. Their incomes are higher than
Mhm.
they're paying over for the state positions. Before, 31,000 of them just got laid off with these
Mhm.
Doge coats. Because I was listening to Governor Westmore earlier today. He was on an interview with Reverend Sharpton at the National Action Network's convention in New York, and he was just breaking this thing down. And I was saying, people need help. You have people who cannot qualify to even go and apply
Mhm.
to get help to keep electricity, and they're
Mhm.
living in $250,000 homes, and they never done nothing but go to work, and all they need is not a hand out, but a
A little
hand
help.
help, some help.
Mhm.
And I said,
Yes.
our people can't get no help. Why isn't anybody having these conversations? And the lady said,
And
Miss,
no, go ahead.
and I went up to a bright seat and went and jumped through all the hoops, and the lady said, Mr. Bethay, you're the same, you and your wife, the reason why I'm still here. She said, here y'all are, y'all been in the same house 30 years, y'all pay taxes, you ain't never asked us for nothing. You get old, now you need some help, but you can't get no help because you made too much money. Well, what you made, uh, you might. My wife was at Howard for 35 years, but hey, man, it's something called
Mhm.
inflation.
It is. And I say these numbers like, okay, so like a program like that, right? So, in this budget, right, they put add 300 million to the Office of Home Energy Programs, and that's supposed to be there for that situation you just did. That office does the light help, the heating assistance, the electricity assistance. And that sounds like a big number, but about 6 million people in Maryland, right? Not only the assistance, but when you think about it, it's not a lot of money.
But when I went up there and I saw them lines and I saw how many people needed help, you understand what I'm saying? I mean, legitimately, people need help. I said, this ain't a drop in the bucket compared to what we pay, because we pay taxes out the yin yang.
Exactly. And that's why the federal government has to step in at some point to, feel some of these guys, because the states are struggling.
Well, see, that's the point why I wanted you on, Daion, for people to be able to connect the dots as to why they need to go to the polls and vote. But I am a little tired right here in my own county, PG County, with our celebrity politicians, because they'll come by and they'll do a so-called community drive-by where they'll run by the community center, but you can never get them at a town hall where you can actually ask them things about their utility bills. And it bugs me to no end. Not one of them have called the town hall meeting and said, look, do you need help with your water bill, gas and electric bills and these things? And these are real issues, because people got some people who have somewhere that they have been buying all these years. You can't stay there. You can't stay there without no utilities.
Well, I'm gonna take it a step back even from there, because there's a limited amount of things that these politicians and government in general can do when it comes to directly affecting the bill, right? Because, there was, like I said, $300 million sounds like a lot, but it can only go so far. They talked about, and you probably saw the press conference the governor had, and he was sitting there with the House Speaker and the Senate President, and they said, we're going to reduce people's bills by average $150 a month, because we're going to put $100 million from the CEF into this ratepayer give back. That's $12 a month. I mean, it's nice, but
see, this is what I'm saying. Nice. This is what I'm saying to folks. It's not that Westmore, it ain't about heartbeat. They don't have the money.
Yeah, they don't have the money. But they need to explain
this is why people have to understand why national politics have consequences. Exactly. The federal government got to step in. You're talking about a $1 trillion defense budget. Yeah. And this man jump up talking about he ain't got no help to help people with energy assistance.
Exactly.
With
healthcare,
daycare, healthcare. I'm talking about things people have to have. So the focus around renewable energy, as I see it right now, when I look at the fact, I am the former president of the National Association of Blacks in Solar. I stepped down. I now serve as chairman of the board of directors for the organization. We are a 501c3 organization. We elected a young brother, Nathaniel Daly. Nathan's been doing some things in the energy area, but I need to try to bring some young blood in. But my problem with them is asking them, look, give me a written plan of action and agenda as to how you want to move forward, because as a board, we got to try to find a way to raise some money, and everybody's got the same problem. Because what they have done, they have wrecked the Inflation Reduction Act, which was the precursor for the Justice 40 initiative, where 40% of that investment was supposed to go into low and moderate income communities. Didn't say nothing about no black, didn't say nothing about white. It said low and moderate income communities nationwide. And I know for a fact that when you got legislation that put $27 billion in an initiative called the Greenhouse Gas Initiative, and that was legislation was introduced by a Maryland state legislator in Congress who authored that legislation with the senator out of Vermont, the Greenhouse Gas Initiative, where 20 billion was supposed to go to what we call our CDFI. Some were green banks, and many of them were nonprofits. Some of them were county, federal, and just 501c3s.
That's
But
right.
the fact of the matter is, they had been vetted. They had gone through the process. They had a proposal, and these proposals were to be initiated by these entities, and the money had been approved by Congress to be spent for that purpose. So, knowing what I know about Michael Regan, who was a North Carolina A alum, I've been knowing Mike for a long time. He knew he didn't have time to get that money out of the coffers, so they deposited that money in Citicorp Bank. That money was placed there. It was nothing done that hadn't been done before in the past when administration changed. We want this to go forward. So when 47's administration came in, the 7 million for the solar for all, 7 billion for the solar for all was left under EPA's coffers. So he clawed that funding back.
Yes.
But to do what with it? You're talking $7 billion of taxpayers' money that Congress said must be spent for this purposes. And you got 60 entities, which the Maryland Clean Energy Center just happened to be one of those entities. And for our state, $133 million was supposed to come in to the state. The state can't replace that.
No. No way replacing it. I mean, we're in court now.
And that's what I'm saying. Here's $133 million that our U.S. attorney and the governors, they've already filed the lawsuit. So that's all they can do is go to the courts.
And that money was going to go to putting rooftop solar on low-income residents. It was going to go to putting solar in multi-family residences, like those canopies and energy, in people's apartment buildings and some multi-family units as well. So, and we were in the process of, we were engaged with about 20 different community organizations to do education, solar job training. So this affected people on the ground that were ready. You had a lot of community organizations that were partnering with us. So it wasn't just us, it was partners who were relying on these funds to do education and outreach, job training, and installation.
Well, see, this is the other part that's so frustrating to me. Okay, here y'all are over at the Maryland Clean Energy Center working y'all real ends off. Planning and time goes into that, but you must be able to implement that. But it costs the organization money to do this. Y'all can't work for free.
No,
so they
came back.
Yeah. And then they came back and told y'all can only get a 15% drawback on what. Well, hell, it costs y'all money. It's not like you can write grant proposals for free. It doesn't matter who was submitting the grant proposal. Somebody has to pay a grant writer. And see, and this is what I'm saying to people. Those are where the jobs were. Those were jobs. Somebody was writing the grant. Somebody would have been paid for this. But if you cut the money off, it wipes out everybody's opportunity.
Exactly. A lot of people.
But see, that's why I couldn't understand why I've been struggling trying to get the agencies heads come on and toot their own horn, because people will say, well, ain't nobody doing nothing. Well, people are doing something, but
Yes,
you don't know what they're doing because they don't talk
exactly.
about what they're
Yes.
doing.
Yeah, we
And
need
that's
transparency. Yeah,
and that
yeah.
has been one of the biggest problems that I've had with dealing with the Maryland Clean Energy Center, with the Montgomery County Green Bank, with the DC Green Bank, with Groundswell. I said, okay, fine. All everything y'all doing, I got no problem with none of it, but who know about it? And
The
when
average
is
person
the
don't know.
deadline? Okay, and see the other part that sort of gets my goal, Damian, is see when the grants RFPs drop. Most people who know anything about grants know, well, January you got to have your grant writer lined up, and these RFPs start dropping, and you don't have a lot of turnaround time for that. So if you don't have a dedicated department for people that's all they do, and
Yeah.
you're a small minority CBE, you got to sit down because you might be a sole proprietor.
Right.
You got to shut down your whole operation to
Yeah.
try to run out and chase a grant,
No,
and
you're
then
right.
you got bills to pay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it creates
But at that
issues
point, yeah.
when, well, this is the point I'm making. Y'all even provided technical grant assistance. That's where I was trying to go with this. It's the reason why
Yeah. I was
I'm
gonna
putting
say
this
it.
out here.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all were doing technical assistance to help companies apply, but if y'all can't get the funding, y'all can't implement their programs.
Exactly, exactly. So yeah, it's all interconnected because MCEC, we did grant writing assistance. The Maryland University of Maryland Environmental Finance Center does it, you know. So there were resources, but you're right. If there's nothing to write for, because they got clawed back, we writing a blank sheet of paper, right? So and it goes back to what you said. Now it's really about putting people in office who understand that, and will force the administration or the next one to do what they were legally required to do in the first place
Well,
and give that money back.
even before you get it to that level, I mean, I was talking to Antoine Thompson, and
Mm-hmm.
Antoine said he's running for the delegate position here in Maryland in the
Mm-hmm.
25th district. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so I not endorsement. We'll invite anybody else on who is running for office other
Mm-hmm.
than Antoine Thompson. I just happen to know him and know that he, as director of the working in that EV charging infrastructure arena and working with various programs, and they do some outstanding work. So the bottom line is, Antoine said, man, when I say Justice 40 initiative, most people don't even know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, you're right. Mm-hmm.
So another thing, Damien, what's the Solar for All program? Could you sort of tell people what the
Yes.
Solar for All program was and what it was
Yes.
supposed to do?
Yes. So when you mentioned a little earlier about that greenhouse gas reduction fund, 20 billion of it went for the, kind of the green banks and the community financial institutions. Another part of that pot of money was $7 billion across the country for solar for all. And what that money was intended to do was to support the development of solar installations, both rooftop and with something called community solar for low income communities across this country. And Maryland, we wrote a grant, MCEC and the partners submitted a grant and received $62 million of that money. And what we were beginning to do with that money was we partnered with about 20 organizations, and we had a couple of things we were doing with it. One was going to be the outreach and education. So stuff like this to let people know, hey, this is what Solar for All is. This is who it's for. This is how you can be eligible. Putting out a website, putting out social media, putting out flyers, everything just to advertise the program so people could know how they could be eligible. The other part was going to be job training. So we work with unions and community-based training organizations who had submitted proposals to just train people how to do solar installation, how to get into apprenticeships, how to become journeyman. So that was a part to develop the workforce. And then we were going to do, like you mentioned, RFPs to solicit solar installers, who you are very familiar with, who then could have said, okay, here's an area that's going to have need. We're going to, I think we were trying to reach about 1,300 single family homes to do solar rooftop installations for people who normally wouldn't able to be, afford to get solar in their house. So the idea was this was going to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and save people at least 20 to 30% on their electric bills. That was the whole point of the program: saving money and reducing emissions.
Well, well, what I want people to understand is nationwide, when DOEE dropped this, they said this would help 900,000
Oh yeah, around the country. Yes.
low and moderate income
Mm-hmm.
residents around the United States of America. And see,
Some states got way more than we got. Bigger
you
states got way more.
understand, and that's what I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
say. And this and the sad part about this thing is like the red states got more investment
Oh,
than the blue states because
yes.
President Biden's strategy was, if I put it in the red states, then those Republican congressmen and senators wouldn't vote against their own best interests and their constituents. Well, I got news for him. News flash, Biden. These suckers took credit for it, even though they didn't vote for it. And
Mm-hmm.
then they turned around
Yeah.
and sabotaged the
Yeah.
whole deal because you had President Biden Inflation Reduction Act bought in one with federal tax credits and incentives was a 1 point something trillion-dollar bill or
Mm-hmm.
legislation, and they were able to get 77 foreign corporations to invest $133 billion in U.S. infrastructure, building manufacturing plants, which
Mm-hmm.
a lot of that got stopped when 47's administration came in and he signed executive orders and rescinded the investment tax credit for those
Mm-hmm.
manufacturing plants. And this is the kind of numbers that we're talking about.
Yes.
North Carolina, Georgia, South Carolina, and Georgia got more money than any place else in the nation. South Carolina got over $12 billion. North Carolina was higher, and Georgia was a little higher. In Georgia
Okay.
alone, you had a North Korean billionaire who invested $2.3 billion, and they built Q-Cell solar manufacturing facility, which is located in Dalton, Georgia, Marjorie Taylor Greene's district. That's why she did a 360. People don't understand. Them folks were real serious down about them jobs at that plant. See, so
Yes, because yes, a
what
lot of EV plants were concentrated in the South.
you,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
this was no, this wasn't an EV plant. This is the largest solar manufacturing facility of solar panels in the North American hemisphere.
Oh no,
Okay,
no, I agree. I agree, but I'm just saying they're
okay, it's
complementary.
called Q
Yeah, we're
Cell.
talking
Yeah,
about the
no,
renewable energy industry.
no, I'm gonna
Yeah.
talk about the other one. Then they got
Mm-hmm.
the recycling plant is 60 miles away. It's
Mm-hmm.
called Solar Recycle. It's another foreign corporations. They invested 1.3 billion and they built the largest recycling facility in the United States, because 10% of all solar panels that are already in use grandfather out every year, around 10% rate. And they're recycling these panels. Right up the road, you have the lithium manufacturing recycling plant in Chester, South Carolina. So all of these plants are in a 100-mile radius of each other, because that's how the manufacturers wanted to keep their supply chain set near I-80, Interstate 85, coming through the heart of North Carolina. So that's how they set it up. I know I was working on several projects down there as it relates to one African American family had 127 acres, and we were trying to get the solar lithium company. The company was called Albemarle Corporation, but they weren't actually the ones that ended up building the plant. I don't know what happened. They broke ground to build a solar lithium manufacturing facility. It may still get built, but before they did, Chester, somebody came in and built a solar lithium recycling plant where they take lithium batteries from all sources, whether they come out of cars or whatever, and they recycle those. We were trying to get that plant to become the off taker for the solar power plant that we were going to build on the black folks' land. And we invested a lot of time and money and energy in this whole thing. It just showed me, and we had the solutions worked out, but it's all about who they want to have what.
In these industries, solar, renewable energy, at this point in their development, they are heavily reliant, particularly on those incentives from the government, to catalyze and attract private investment, because they need to mature. And so, and business needs certainty. When you go in, like you said, you put a lot of time and effort into these issues, be it these grants, or building a plant itself. You take a lot of time and you invest a lot of your money, assuming the government is going to keep its word.
And that's not just on the state level. It might be with the local city, because I mean we were dealing with the city, because they had to build 5,000 houses to house the people that's going to move into Chester, South Carolina, to work at this plant, because they got nowhere for them to stay. See, this is what point I'm trying to say. Chester is an all-black town. It's a small town, huge county, but the city limit is small. And the mayor of the city could have actually, they could issued, and when we went down and we met, he said, well, look, all we got to do is send pass a regulation. We can annex that property and put it under the city, where you don't have to pay those pass-throughs, and you'll be able to run. You don't have to go up on the grid. You can run that uplink in the ground, and we can work on getting those pass-throughs through those farmers' properties, because they got to come to the city for certain favors. So we want favor, because what we were talking about, powering their whole city hall, the elementary school. We could have did that with the 50 megawatt farm we were building. And it was a win-win situation for them. And we had the financing, but somebody else stepped to the table with some money, and we turned around. We didn't hear anything until the ribbon was being cut on the factory. I looked down the road. I go back and I check the headlines down there. You know, that's big news, man. It was all over the paper. I called my partner. I said, Richard, have you checked with your folks down there? And I mean, it was deep, but it taught me that we as Black folks are in some very unique situations because you never know who owns land, and you never know who has to come through your land. And it's been interesting now that people have to get paid for these right of ways, and to come through their properties. And I'm telling people, I said, look, hey, you better understand that if they're coming that way, you better be prepared and positioned that you can go to the local planning boards and have those frontline properties facing that highway rezoned for commercial use, so y'all can do some leasing to some folks just like everybody else, so y'all ain't got to work no more.
Exactly. If you're
Because
going to, yeah,
because
don't give it up cheap. Don't
yeah,
sell out cheap.
but
Yeah.
this is what I'm saying, because the highways are already cut through the people's properties. When you travel on the interstate road, in other words, when you travel on the interstate highway, you never know why the beltway zigzags. And a guy said that to me one time, 495 and 695. I said, well, why is that? I was driving this guy, very, very well off family here. Call the name, which I won't, everybody know him. But he said, man, look, do you think that Lord Baltimore, Lord Fairfax, he said, you go back and check and see about these charters that came from England. He said, these people came here and they had charters. Okay, they read the charter, this our land. They still operating on them bases. He said, look, when you got ready to come through these roads, they weren't coming through unless they came through certain people's properties. He said, do you know what that means when you build an off ramp into a community? He said, it might cost them 1 point something million just to build an off ramp. He said, but you know how many billions of dollars that brings in when the interstate highway is built through your road? He said, that's why when you see how it wiggles, a lot of times it's wiggling because they didn't want to go through land and own the people of color. They went around them. And they have experienced the same thing in my home state of South Carolina, because they have built an interstate. I-80 it's been there for years. 80 comes out of Ohio and Illinois at 83, 81, and it's built all the way through North Carolina to get to the South Carolina line. It's called I-73. Now
Okay.
this is where it's going. It's going into Myrtle Beach. Myrtle Beach is the last seashore resort in America that is not connected by a interstate highway. The last 70 miles is a 2-lane country highway called I-17. Now, this is the problem. Myrtle Beach brings in $10 billion a year, tourist trade. Not only does it do that in tourist trade and beach traffic, but they have a seaport down there at Myrtle Beach. A lot of people don't
I
understand.
didn't realize that. Okay.
And what they do, they ship in stuff. They have commercial parks in Marion County, which is in Horry County. That's at the west end of the county, coming back west, because you got to go east till you get to the beach. And those trucks company, because South Carolina and North Carolina, the biggest industry in the state is the trucking industry.
Okay.
They break those containers down, repackage those products, and they're shipped west. They're shipped south. They're shipped. Well, you can't go east because you're already at the ocean. Okay? But that's where I-95 interstates. That's a major connection to get those products out to that eastern seaboard, because you got a lot of manufacturing facilities located off of 95 when you go straight through those small rural counties. and you have something called Fort Bragg, North Carolina,
I've been
82nd
there.
Airborne,
Mm-hmm.
82nd Airborne. So Congress passed a law saying, hey, this is a national security issue. When storms hit, because Horry County got almost a 500,000 residents, you back up one county to Marion County, you got less than 30,000 people living in the whole county.
Oh.
Same in Dillon County, same in Marlborough County. And that's the problem. The state received $90 million to pay for right of ways. I have the economic impact study here in my office.
Mm-hmm.
But every time they came and ran 5 highway assimilations, they ran into property that belonged to black folk because my father's husband, Uncle GB, they got 250 acres of land, and Interstate I-73 was supposed to come through the middle of it 20 years ago. When they checked and found out they was coming through black folks' land, they backed off. They ran 4 simulations, and every time they ran into black folks. So they stopped with the highway, but they still took the money. That money was to pay for right of ways through those black folks' properties and for the economic impact study. So the governors down there waited 20 years. Now they're clearing eminent domain. See, this is happening now. Nobody's talking about it. Here we have a scenario where you have black property owners who have the state highway already built through their land, because that 2-lane highway, I-17, that last
Mm-hmm.
70 miles, runs right through the middle of black folks' properties.
Okay.
I know families down there. A guy kind of contacted me, wanted to build an EV charging facility down there. You
Were they
get to Dillon,
compensated for that? Were they compensated for that? That part?
nah, bro. The issue was nobody. He didn't know. They didn't know how to structure it and how to get it cleared through Columbia, because there's politics involved in putting in the infrastructure charging charging systems for electric vehicles near interstate highways. Even though it's private, you own that land. They had a stipulation that said it had to be in a major commercial. When you came off the highway, it had to be within 1 mile, and it had to be in a major commercial format, like a shopping mall or something. You come
Mm-hmm.
off and you'll see a shopping mall, you see electric
Yeah.
chargers sitting there. They
Mm-hmm.
did that, I think, to sort of play games, because I-17 right now is still the only way you got until they build that highway.
Mm-hmm.
They stopped that completion of that highway, man. The highway is built all the way from the state of Ohio in Illinois to the South Carolina line. That's where they stopped at it. They ran
Mm-hmm.
into the same problem in Bennettsville, that's Marlborough County. Ran the same problem in Dillon and the same problem in Marion. Now, they could not get that highway through, but it was an environmental piece. So it sort of showed me how things work in terms of how policy uh, can impact how things are going to, who's going to get what and when and where. And if you don't have anybody that's in your corner, and you depending on Lindsey Graham and the help down there, it's sort of rough, brother. So I uh, I, I'm gonna be respectful, but it's sort of rough. So
Yeah.
I'm saying all that to say that sometimes we're sort of blessed being living in the DMV area where you have media that maybe can shine the light on things like that.
Yes.
Because when you get in those small market news areas and small town news areas, and they're very biased in their reporting, they don't even want to talk about that, man.
Yeah. They don't even put it in that kind of context that you're talking
Yeah,
about
they're not gonna
because
put it in that kind of
yeah.
context. And see,
Mm-mm.
uh, everybody's getting hurt, but I know one thing. Jackie Hayes said to me, he said, who's the state representative? He said, Ron, if they don't build an off ramp in Dillon County, hell will freeze over because there ain't nowhere in the world they coming through here. And this highway got across over 95. 95 been in Dillon since Dillon's existence. It was built when they built it. They built it straight through the county. He said, "How you? They can't move the high interstate. It's already been here all these years. 301 is next to it." He said they can pick their poison. They got to have off ramps for people to get off one interstate to get on another one to go south and north.
Okay.
And for them to even talk about that, and he said, no, we don't have the money or the number of residents, the tax to raise the money. So the
Mm-hmm.
government got the money, put the money up. And see,
Mm-hmm.
that is what happens. You have these small rural counties that they're not poor in terms of being poor. They're
Mm-hmm.
poor because they have been left out of the economic pie.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You understand? And highways determine everything, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Studying how the system works. But look, man, we've come to the end of this show. Uh, I want you to provide some information on how people can get in contact with you at the institute, what they can do to support what y'all are doing. And I want to thank you for taking time from your schedule to
Yes.
join me today.
No, I enjoyed it. It's a great conversation, very enlightening. One thing I did want to roll up because we talked about rural areas. Beyond education, the Uplift Institute is also working and partnering with organizations in the global South to bring solar to people that don't even have electricity, period. So, here we're talking about, affordability and equity. And there we're just talking about, basic access, just having lights to turn on. So we are
Yeah,
working to
I
develop.
understand.
Mhm.
I understand.
Yes. So we're
I'm down
working.
in there, brother.
Yes.
I
Yes.
understand.
Yeah. So we're
Believe me,
working with
when I say
partners
I
there.
understand, I understand. Well,
So
look,
we're, so if we
I
know if
know that. Yeah, I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to give it out to Maryland Clean Energy Center. Y'all have an event taking place on the 21st, I think, at your at the hotel there in College Park. It's for Climate Week, and I'm going to give a plug on this show to my listening audience. That people can go online to Maryland Clean Energy Center, and you can register to be a part of that. It's going to be very, very informative. Then the very next day on the 22nd, the Greater Washington Clean Cities Collaboration Group, they have Climate Week. They're having an event. And then you have Groundswell, DC, Green Bank, and the DC Chamber of Commerce are putting on a sustainability educational format at the Howard Theater around the green infrastructure policies and opportunities that's going to be created because people are going to have to try to get their properties compliant to these new infrastructure standards that have been passed in these municipalities. But somebody's going to have to come up with some money to help these folks do that. So
yes, yeah,
that's
and if
that's a whole
yeah,
written up other conversation. But I wanted to
definitely.
plug
Yeah.
that before we went
No, I
off the
appreciate
air.
it. Yeah. And
Yeah.
if you want to learn more about the Uplift Institute, visit www.upliftinstitute.org. greendiasporan.org. We're also having a conference in Belize, the Green Diasporan Conference in November, and there's more information about that conference, to learn about opportunities, in renewable energy and land ownership and other business opportunities there. So, we have an international perspective as well. And we think we got to connect the issues that are here, the things that are happening to our people around the world, and how we can, use green energy as a resource to lift us all up.
Well, with that being said, bro, I agree with you on that. And I've been working with several folks around some new technologies, and I'm I didn't want to talk about things until I sort of see some contractual understandings being worked out with folk, because I don't want to be in the middle of stuff that's not my business, so I won't talk on it. But
That's right.
bringing our people together, like little boy used to tell me. He said, "Man, that you got a rough job, bro. That's like herding cats." So I sort of understand it.
Yeah, I mean,
Tell
the
me
hardest
about
thing,
it.
the hardest thing
But
to
with
bring
that,
about
brother,
is a good idea.
brother Daion, yeah, and well,
Yeah.
I told somebody the other day, I said, one thing about us, we got to understand, you got a drum major and then you got the band. Somebody got to be in the band. Everybody can't be the drum major. we got a problem with folks. Everybody want to be the drum major.
Right. When they have 100% of nothing instead of 10% of something. So
That's right. All right, brother Damien, thank you for your time, man. You have a
thank you,
beautiful
Ron.
weekend, and I really enjoyed you. And you be blessed. Okay. All right. Have a
Thank
good
you.
day. All right. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Mm-hmm. And ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to another end of another exciting edition of Solar Now in the Future with its economic impact on Black America. You was just listening to brother Daion Trasada, and he is the project manager and grant and community engagement director for the Maryland Clean Energy Center, which is our green bank here in the state of Maryland. You heard him talking about various initiatives and programs that they've tried to implement, but because of the clawback and the of 47th administration and how it has impacted the green bank of the state of Maryland, it's creating ripple effects in the economy without a doubt. So, with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, this show is brought to you every week by, of course, you see this signage behind here, the Black Sports Legends Foundation, and we will be launching in the very, very near future a sports podcast show, and I'm announcing it today. It's called Locked Into the Business of Sports, and it's going to have some very interesting subject matter that we're going to be talking about from the old school perspective and the new school of a little boy said the church of what's happening now here on the platform of right here with me, your host, and I'm bringing some other folks to co-host this piece. So I'm making the announcement today to let people know you're gonna get a double barrel episode of me twice a year. One show will be what it is. It will still be what it is. Solar now in the future with its economic impact on Black America. And I'm your host, Ron Bethay. And I don't want you to meet me back here. I want you to beat me back here. And remember that this is the Positive Change online radio broadcast digital TV network. And we are not the greedy, but we are definitely the needy as we struggle to bring this to you every week as we close another exciting edition of Solar Now and the Future with its economic impact on Black America. Until next week, we say go in peace.